whatever, they can kind of see it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's a 1902 Worcestershire bottle. It's cool, and things like this, they really sometimes they cause me to daydream and to go back in time in a way, in the best way I know how, and to truly imagine how this item could have possibly ended up in the creek. What do you think? Here's what I think.
I don't know.
It was 1902.
Ah.
Okay? Now, back in 1902, this is even more rural. Imagine how rural.
Clearly. 1902, that was...
plants everywhere. Animals,
Yeah.
it was wild.
Barely civilized.
It was wildlife back then, and yes, we were still beating out our niche in the vast wilderness here in the Des Plaines River Valley back in 1902, and a local boy who lived at that same farmhouse.
Oh my God. That's a lot of action at that farmhouse over the years.
Yes, and they had a strong family tradition of being racially progressive.
Yeah.
Now,
Which is, let's applaud them for that right off the bat.
of course, let's see, I can do that actually. This is for the racial.
Yeah, progressive.
The racially
Yeah, yeah.
progressives. Everybody in the chat, please
Give it up
give a hand for
for
racially progressive people.
in the 1900s.
Where would we be without them?
And this is not facetious. This is
No,
of course.
shit
I'm
like
just
that is
saying.
not a joke. Now, in 1902, this man, his name was Kaloop.
Oh, Kloop.
Kaloop.
Kaloop.
K-E-L-U-P-E.
Yeah, common name back then, actually,
Yeah, and
in the area.
he was a chef, is what he was.
Okay.
And there in the Des Plaines River, where he had grown up, it was always his dream to be a chef, and he had finally achieved that. But it had been his dream ever since the... Come on. 1880s.
Oh.
So now, when Kaloop was a child in the 1880s there in the Des Plaines River Valley in what would become Lamont, Illinois,
Yeah.
now imagine how rural. We are talking just full on
It's insane.
where
how rural
the
that would
wild
be.
things are. It's
Yes.
fucking insane. Yeah, you don't know what's gonna happen. So he's growing up, dreaming of being a chef one day, and finally one day he makes his way down by the river, and he sees the grandest vessel he's ever seen in his life.
Yeah.
And now this is a cruise boat on its way from the lake back down to the Illinois River to the Mississippi, and it's going to eventually go back to New Orleans,
Old
which
Man
is its
River.
port of call. Now, it just so happens that several members of the crew, as they docked, made their way off the boat, and Kaloop happened to strike up a conversation with legendary New Orleans chef Dautre Charlevoix,
Whoa. Really?
who introduced him. Now, this is the 1880s. You didn't have a lot of ways to get things, But Dautre Charlevoix knew his way around. He'd been up and down the river, and every tributary it had to offer, and by God, he had his share of women as well.
Oh.
All kinds of women. All shapes and sizes.
Now this is Kaloop?
And ages, regrettably. It was the 1880s. There was not a lot of standard about that. But
yeah.
as the super spreaders have made clear, they don't want to hear about that. So listen. Dautre Charlevoix pulled out of his pocket a magical item that would come to change Kaloop's life forever. You know what that item was?
What was it?
A bottle of this here Worcestershire sauce. And he said, "Look here, Kaloop. I want you to take this Worcestershire, take it back with you and learn to make the sauces."
Uh-huh.
So Kaloop, armed with this magical new elixir, made his way back home and began to work and became the master chef that he had always hoped he would be. Now, back in 1902,
Oh, all right. Yeah. And he's still got the bottle of Worcestershire.
well, he was able to find some as the supply chain was broadened and networks were strengthened. He was able to replenish his supply.
Yeah.
So he now was one of the most successful local chefs. Right? Oh, D'autre Charlevoix. He was black.
Ah.
Okay.
Good.
It's gonna come into play here.
Good.
And so.
And he was the kind soul that that bestowed this magical
changed his
elixir.
life.
Yeah, that changed his life. Okay, good.
Now-
D'autre. Good on D'autre.
So now Kaloop, in 1902, he's cooking a meal for the mayor of Lamont in his mansion. And all of the most important people in town are there. They're having a boisterous time. They're drinking absinthe.
Oof.
It's starting to get weird. And Kaloop serves him this masterful meal with his signature sauce, secret ingredient, Worcestershire. The mayor proclaims it to be the greatest meal he's ever had in his entire life and makes the vile, racist comment, "This is why I don't employ Negroes to cook my food,
Ugh.
because they have no sense of flavor." Now, that's a stereotype from the time. So
Clearly an ignorant man.
Kaloop
Mm-hmm.
begins to fume,
Obviously.
being the racial progressive that he is, and having known that it was a black man, D'autre Charlevoix, which put his, his life on track
Yeah.
and made him the chef that he is today. He sits there and he fumes and he can't take it anymore, and he screams out at the mayor, "I learned everything I know from a black man."
Yeah.
Now, at the time,
That's
a
probably-
bold statement.
That is very bold.
may seem benign now. I mean,
Yeah.
you could say that now and nobody would bat an eye.
course.
But 1902, the mayor of Lamont, now he was a real mean son of a bitch, too. I'm not sure what his name was. It was probably like,
His name was Jacoby.
it was like Billard. Kind of like billiard without the
Jacobin.
I. I think it was like Billard. Yeah, whatever it was.
His name was Billop.
So he immediately blows his stack.
Oh my god.
Okay, Kaloop can see what's in the works, so he heads for the hills and he breaks away. The mayor sends his henchmen
Ugh.
after him, armed with clubs, daggers, and for some reason those three things that Raphael had, scythes or whatever those are.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so he
That
sends
makes sense
he sends
in
the
that
henchmen
area.
after him. Now Kaloop runs as fast as he can, and you know where he gets to? Old Bluff Road. Now he runs down Bluff Road past what would later become a trout hatchery, back to that farmhouse. Henchman just nipping at his heels, which I hope I haven't said every time. And and he runs, stumbles down into the creek with his favorite sauce, Worcestershire. Of course, he always carried a bottle of it in his pocket
Of
for
course.
any situation.
Mhm.
As he stumbles, it tumbles out of his pocket, doesn't break, rolls down the rocks. Now, it doesn't make sense to us, but for some reason, he wanted to recover it. And he took his eyes off his attackers, and in his attempt to recover his favorite sauce, he was left defenseless, and he was stabbed in the spine over and just in between each vertebrae. They stabbed once directly into his spine. And
Precision, man.
yeah, and then eventually, yes, he
Succumbed to
sadly
his-
bled out.
Yeah, succumbed to his wounds.
And his lone bottle of Worcestershire sauce that he carried in his pocket would roll down to the bottom of the creek, be covered in silt, sediment, other
And
debris.
Disgrace.
Yes, for
the
120
atrocity.
years until I happened by and discovered this and remembered the story of old Kaloop.
And there you
we
have
go.
it, folks. Another treasure found by none other than
and his
Vinny.
friend D'autre Charlevoix, who he died defending his honor.
Yeah. Wow, that was a touching one.
Mm-hmm.
Good old Kaloop. Now, a super spreader says, "Look, I'm a direct descendant of D'autre Charlevoix, and I can tell you this story is absolutely false. It was a mustard bottle." So we have controversy. For
That's
next
like
episode.
when they have those websites that's like, oh, George Washington Carver didn't really invent peanut butter. It's this other. It's just they'll just try to just discredit anything a black guy ever did.
that's true.
You know,
yeah. Come on, guys.
which is not cool. That's like I thought we were mounted up. And
Yeah, come on.
part of-
Mount up, you idiots.
Yeah, if for anybody
Knock
that
it
missed